Next up on the broadcast, former State Senator Phil Williams of Rainbow City is in studio with us. Nice to see you again. Welcome back to Capital Journal.
Good to see you, Don. Thanks for having me.
You are now Director of Policy Strategy with the Alabama Policy Institute, and you'll be monitoring things closely in the upcoming legislative session. It'll be your first as a non-legislator in a number of years, right? Remind us again how long you served here at the State House.
8 years, 8 good years. Enjoyed it thoroughly. Got to leave on my own, my own volition. Felt
That's
like it was
always
this
nice.
time, yeah. But then API, the Alabama Policy Institute, called and asked if I would consider a position with them, and here I am.
Indeed. The Alabama Policy Institute, of course, a conservative think tank who takes positions on a number of issues. You're recently out with a study on the gas tax issue, which apparently is going to be a big priority, if not the #1 priority, in the upcoming legislative session. What I found interesting about this study, among other things, was that it says you can be conservative and still debate a tax increase.
Absolutely.
Tell us about your feeling there.
Yeah, I think it's very fair to say you can be a conservative and talk about taxes. I mean, and first of all, we're a democracy. I wouldn't fault anyone for going to the podium to debate an issue. You should. That's part of what we're here for. But the reality is, typically you see the conservative position in politics being less on the tax side. So I will say this, API acknowledges right up front that roads and bridges do cost money. The government costs money. However, we are not just acquiescing to the idea that bringing a straight tax bill is the conservative position on the need for revenue in infrastructure. So that being said, we are advocating what we call 3 imperatives. They're basically principles that we believe should be a part of the mix in debating the gas tax issue.
One of those imperatives is a tax increase should be the last option, right?
Absolutely the last option. I mean, if you're going to say you're a conservative, if you're going to say you're a limited government elected official, then you have to be able to show your constituency and the broader base of voters and consumers in the state that you gave it your every last option on the table discussion before you ever raise a tax. And that's what we're asking for. That's of the 3 imperatives, that's #1. Show the world that taxes were your absolute last resort before you do it.
And if you're going to go down this road, the tax increase road, I believe API says we should couple that with reform, right?
Yeah, there's some very easy reforms, and I say easy. There's going to be debate on them. But for instance, one of the ones that is an easy reform in the possibility of getting this overall package together is the fact that we have what we've labeled the $63 million backdoor. So what's happening right now is, for years, the current gas tax, the one we already pay, pays into the Alabama Road and Bridge Fund. But then every year, $63 million plus or minus comes out of that and goes to pay for the court system and for ALEA. Now, I don't think for a second that they should not have their appropriations. They need it. But I believe that we're in a position right now where that shouldn't be happening. And you can give them their own standalone appropriations. But then, truth be told, if you're going to tell the citizens of this state, we need more money for roads and bridges, well, then stop spending what we do have on non-roads and bridges. Mm-hmm. So we think that one of the first reforms you should consider is just merely close that back door. Stop taking money out for things that don't constitute roads and bridges. And instantly, you've got $63 million more without raising a single dime of taxes.
That's been brought up a number of times over the years. Do you think it'll be an easier sell, given that now a tax increase may very well be on the table?
I think so, because we are still a conservative state with a conservative supermajority in both the House and the Senate. And there are, I would say, having sat in those seats, that there are any number of conservative legislators who are just praying that someone will show them some ways they can handle this issue and still be a conservative in the process. One of which is squeezing the money out of government that still exists, that is not being used for its intended purpose, which is infrastructure.
Your third imperative says that if you're going to increase one tax, you need to decrease another one. And I believe you're calling on the lawmakers to look at decreasing or doing away with the grocery tax, right?
Yeah, and we are not talking in a vacuum here. That's not something that's new and different to the world. In fact, our sister state to the north, Tennessee, did that in 2017. Before they raised the gas tax for infrastructure, like we're debating here, they lowered their grocery tax. Alabama is actually one of only 12 states in the nation that even taxes groceries at all. And of that, we're only one of 7 that taxes it at the highest possible rate. So that being said, here we are. It's one of the most regressive taxes out there. It taxes the poorest among us because everybody has to eat. And here we are taxing the poorest citizens in the state grocery money, while we're one of only a few states that does it, and yet we are one of the poorest states in the nation per capita in terms of income. So I think that, granted, it would be a debate. It doesn't have to be our plan. Find another way to do it. Tennessee lowered their grocery tax. New Jersey did away with their death tax. South Carolina gave income tax deductions. But the Americans for Tax Reform, run by Grover Norquist, who, fiscally hawkish and, rails against taxes on a regular basis.
Indeed.
They came out and lauded all 3 of those other states for doing it that way. And I believe if you show the citizens of this state, we're going to lower one tax before we raise another, you will gain their trust.
There was some polling coming out this week that gave some weight to your study.
It's not our poll, so I'll let the people who ran it actually discuss their own numbers. But I will tell you this, they polled the very plans you and I just discussed. The $63 million backdoor and the grocery offset, both of those polled extremely high on a statewide basis. And I tend to think that's going to play out quite well for the plan as API has proposed it.
Last week we had Representative Bill Poole of Tuscaloosa on the show. He says he's going to carry a gas tax increase bill in the House. He says crucial to its success will be selling the public on this idea of digging deeper at the gas pump to pay for infrastructure. Is it going to be a tough sell, do you think?
It's going to be a very tough sell. I'll be honest with you, sitting here today, as you and I are talking, I think if they bring a straight tax bill to the floor, no reforms, no offsets, it's going to fail. That's my sense of it. That is my perception as having sat in those same seats and voted on similar legislation in the past. But I do believe if they will couple it with reforms, couple it with perhaps an offset, even a potential partial offset, I think that they will wind up being able to curry favor with the most conservative members of the House and the Senate and get something done.
Briefly, before we close, API in taking this position in no way is trying to overshadow the need that exists for our crumbling infrastructure.
Not at all. In fact, the opening line of the position paper that we put out says that we agree with the fact that infrastructure spending is necessary and vital to the state. And we also know that the current revenues that pay for infrastructure have not increased in over 25 years. And yet the cost of maintaining and building roads has increased. But we're saying if you're going to be a conservative, there's a better way to build that mousetrap. And we think these reforms and offsets are the way to go.
Former State Senator Phil Williams of Rainbow City is now the Director of Policy Strategy for the Alabama Policy Institute. It's a pleasure to have you on the show again.
Thanks, Don. Good to see you.
You bet.